What's up, Chumbags? It's your girl Alexa. Happy New Year. So as many people watching this probably know, one, I had a goal of reading 20 books this year that I was off to a very rocky start with. And two, I just went to India for a month at the end of the year. Now, how do those things correlate? Well, while I was in India, I was actually able to read a surprising amount of books. I was there for 1 month, and while there, I finished / right around it started 6 books. 3 of them I read via this nice little Kindle device that we bought. Not sponsored at all, FYI, but this thing was incredible. I'll talk more about it as this video goes on. The other 3 were audiobooks. And so those 2 methods, because obviously I wasn't about to lug around a bunch of physical books while I was there. I had enough luggage, enough things to carry. So having this really lightweight, it even fit, and I had like a tiny purse for my passports and stuff. And so even in the airport, I just had it in that, and it fit perfectly, and that was just really convenient for me the whole time. And I could just bring it with me as long as I brought my purse, whichever purse it would fit inside, and that was really nice. So with finishing those 6 books, mostly within my trip to India, I'll give the specific timelines as I talk about each book. That did bring my total books for the year up to 16, and I'll talk more about those stats at the end of this video. Right before I went to India, I actually did finish Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice, the book that I was reading for the fall, and I did record a really quick review literally the day that I left, like before leaving for the airport. One of the last things I did was I recorded that video and then like unplugged everything from my desk because I was gonna be gone for a month. I was hoping to be able to like edit it quick from my iPad while I was there in India, but then I ended up not doing that. So I will be editing that and putting it at the very end of this video. It's a fall book, so obviously a little wrong time of year for it, but just in case anyone wants some thoughts on Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice, my review for that will be at the end of this video, and there should be little like chapter markers letting you know. That was kind of my last physical book that I read of the year, not via a Kindle. And yeah, that one you can skip there for my thoughts. It was not for, I was not the target audience. Let's leave it at that for right now. But back to the other 6 books that I read. I was pleasantly surprised with how much I was able to read there. I was often finding myself, like when I had free time, drawn to reading from my Kindle versus like pulling out my phone or doing something else. Because I had brought like my Switch Lite, which I didn't even open once while I was there. Actually, I just always went for reading or listening to an audiobook when I had free time. And that was really nice. I enjoyed that. I want to try and bring that energy more into 2026. Like, let's use phones a little less and read more. I think that's something everyone could be doing because we're all addicted to our phones. It's a problem. So I'm going to go through the books in the order that I finished them, starting off with an audiobook that actually started before I left for India, but did finish on my plane ride to India. And that is Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, narrated by Simon Vance. I had started listening to this a while back. It'd been kind of my car book that I was listening to, and it had taken me a little bit to finish. Really nice to just kind of sit on the plane and get into it. That was like the first thing I did actually on the plane ride, because the first 14-hour plane ride that we took, I did not sleep at all. And so I finished Interview with the Vampire and then started reading my next book. Really enjoyed the Interview with the Vampire. I did not know it was a series. I'd previously seen the movie some point previously, like a couple years back, and I remember enjoying it. I do want to rewatch it now having read the book, but I also kind of want to read the rest of the books. I genuinely had no idea the series. Obviously, I knew Anne Rice was like the mother of vampire novels, but I'd never read any of her books, and I thought she had like just like separate books. I didn't realize that this Interview with the Vampire was a start of I think it's like 8-book series or something like that. Oh, 13 titles. Apologies. Yeah, 13 book series. So I am intrigued, and the second one obviously is called The Vampire Lestat. So that does draw me in a bit, because I thought Lestat was such a fascinating character, and I do wonder like the end of the book sets up well for that being the next one. And so I'm just intrigued to see how it goes. Like, is it always in this interview style? Does it switch over to a different style as it goes? Like, is it the same interviewer, like just like going around and getting all these tales and stories, or how does it progress? And does interviewer become a vampire? Like, I'm intrigued. There's a lot of open things that I really would like to find out, and I think the way to do that probably is reading the rest of those books, but there's 13 of them, so it'll probably take a while. It was an intriguing take on vampire. I think it felt really real. is what I found really interesting about it. Because, like, obviously, a lot of vampire stuff I've read in the past is more like YA, and, you know, catering in a different sort of direction. And so it was interesting to read something so genuine feeling about vampires. Like, it felt very real. The main character, Louis, the emotions he talks through, like, they're so human, and it really paints this negative light on vampirism that I enjoyed, because I always think about that whenever I, like, you know, even back when I was, like, you know, a preteen reading Twilight, I would think about, like, you know, I would never want to be a vampire. The idea of living forever, terrifying. I absolutely would not. And this one, I think, really explored that and talked about those emotions in such an interesting way that I really, like, I mean, related to feels like the wrong word because it's talking about an immortal, like, vampire. But I really, like, understood. It made sense with my thoughts on what I felt like being, like, immortal would be like. And it was intriguing to read this from something written so long back. And that also made me intrigued to read more of Anne Rice's work. So after I finished listening to Interview with the Vampire, I then pulled out my new Kindle that I bought right before we left. And this is not a sponsorship, but I want you to know. So this is still on airplane mode because I just installed a bunch of books before I left. And I charged this before I left for India, November 23rd. It is today, January 3rd of 2026, and it has not died. I've not charged it since then, and it has 23% left. So that's one great thing. Like, I had this the whole trip, was reading quite a bit. I read 3 books off of it, and 3 in a little bit because I'm also 36% into another book, and 23% battery. It has been long over a month now. It is on airplane mode that whole time, so that's a factor. But yeah, so then I did turn it off airplane mode at one point while I was there to just install a couple more books. And then I just put it back on because I was like, why not? And I've kept it there now. The first book I read on this device, though, was The Outsider by Stephen King. Now, if you've heard me talk before, you know I love Stephen King. And I did finish Finders Keeper just a little bit ago, which is the second book in the Bill Hodges trilogy. And I knew that The Outsider had Holly in it. I'd watched a couple scenes from the show because Suri had watched the show, and so my husband, and so I had seen a few random things and had seen the character of Holly in that TV show. But I didn't realize how closely connected it was going to be to Bill Hodges trilogy. So it did spoil some stuff about the third book, which pretty disappointing for me because I really loved those books, and I was really and I am still really looking forward to reading the third one, but I was like, I wish I didn't know this. But that's okay. That's my own fault. I should have read the third one first, but I was intrigued. I wanted to read something Stephen King, and I had the Outsider audiobook. Not audiobook, Kindle book, and I don't have the third Bill Hodges book yet, so I need to get that. I listened to the first 2 as audiobooks, and so I'm thinking I'm going to read the third one as an audiobook too because I like that consistency, and then I'll probably buy some paperback copies of each of them so I can have them. But I love Holly, and after I finish the Bill Hodges third book, I am going to probably go through and try and read the other books in the sort of Holly Gibney world. I believe we have Never Flinch, If It Bleeds, and then Holly, I think, are the other ones. Not in that order. I think If It Bleeds, then If It Never Flinch, then Holly, I think, is the order of them. Could be slightly wrong. That's just from memory. But yeah, I love the book. The Outsider is really intriguing. The story of it all. Oh, it was so intense. My husband did ruin one scene of it because he had previously read it and he misheard me and thought I said I finished it, but instead I had not. And so there's a scene that's building up for like multiple chapters where you have this one character who's kind of working with the outsider, and then you have our team of heroes who are going to try and stop the outsider. And there's this whole kind of like, you switch between different perspectives all throughout the book, and you're kind of building up to them interacting with each other. And you're like, will this happen? How will this happen? Like, what's gonna go down? People gonna die? Like, what's up? And so it's building up for chapters and chapters, and I was 4 pages away from the payoff of that buildup. And my husband slightly spoiled it happened. He was like, because he kept telling me as I was reading, there's one point when he was reading it where he was like, come on, Steven, like, how dare you do this to me? And it's the scene when they all get out of their car and they finally have an interaction. And I was so like, are you kidding me? I was 4 pages away. Spoiler, skip to this time. It is when the group of 6 get out of the car. He was like, yeah, and like they all get out of the car, and then all of a sudden like 3 of them just get shot. And I'm like, what? What was that? What was that? Straight? I have not read that. And he was like, what? And then I opened up the Kindle later that day to read it, and I was literally 4 pages away. I was so frustrated with him because I'm like, it has been building up to that for so long. He was slightly wrong because it wasn't 3 people who die. It was 2, and 1 gets injured. But still, I was like wondering, I figured someone was gonna die because it's Stephen King and he isn't afraid to do that, but I was kind of hopeful that they wouldn't. And I knew that if characters were gonna die, it was gonna be those 2. I don't know why, I just like knew it, especially Howie. I knew Howie. I knew it was gonna be him. And how they finally kill the outsider and the ending of it, where you have Ralph and Holly still sort of have that relationship and that bond that's really important to the both of them, is something that I really liked. I think that it was really impactful. And I realized, I think I said 6 a moment ago, and they 6 get out of the car, but I think it's actually 5. I don't know why my brain, it's 6 people total involved in the scene, but it's 5 people get out of the car. But yeah, if I talk this long about each of these books, this is gonna be like an hour video. So let's continue on. But The Outsider, top one of my favorite books. I love Stephen King. I love the way he writes, and I have yet to read a Stephen King book I don't like. There's, some stuff, like the one scene in It I could have done without reading, but that would be good if that wasn't in my brain, but like still the writing was spectacular, and I overall loved the book It. There's a couple things, but if you've read it, but I overall really loved the book, the way the story goes on, and that's been true for every Stephen King book I have read, and I look forward to reading more Stephen King books. Next one, this is the second book I've read by this author. It was more of a novella, and it is Hot for Slayer by Ali Hazelwood. And this I also read on my Kindle. I wanted sort of like a quick fun read, and this one also has a vampire in it, so we're keeping on trend there. But it's a vampire and a vampire hunter, and it's a novella about them sort of like they've been hunting, the hunter's been hunting the vampire for years and years and years and years, and it's sort of like, it's like a little enemies to lovers story, and it was okay. I think there was some stuff I laughed at that was not supposed to be funny, but there were also some nice moments, and I think the concept of it I really enjoyed. That's why I was like, okay, let me give this a chance, because Bride, if you've seen my review of that, I had it was one where I like wanted to like it, but one scene is just one of my pet peeves that makes it so I can't give an amazing rating to a book if it includes that in there, because it's just one of my least favorite things that happens in media with characters. And so this one didn't have any of that. None of that characters doing something out of character just to forward the plot and make a specific plot point happen. But there's none of that. It was fine. It was a very quick read. It was very simple. It's not a book I think I'm going to be thinking about for years to come, but it was a fun enough time. It's kind of my overall review for Hot for Slayer by Ali Hazelwood. The next book I listened to, so now I'm getting closer to Christmas time. I'm in the beautiful warm weather of India, and I'm like, I want some Christmas vibes. So I listened to a book called Christmas at Lilac Cottage, written by Holly Martin, narrated by Emma Newman. I really liked her voice. She was nice, soothing, and while this book wasn't perfect or anything, it was so cozy. I really loved the world building of it all, that when I finished the book, I was a little sad because I was enjoying listening to it so much. It was just such like a fun little snuggle up and listen to story that I was like, oh, I just kind of like miss being in that cozy space when I finished listening to it. So while there were times where I was like, oh, okay, come on now. Like, as the plot continued on, because it was a bit longer. It was about 11 hours long. So it wasn't like a super quick one, but it wasn't crazy long or anything. And I did just enjoy it though. Like, I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed how they set up this town, which there are more books in this town, it seems. So like this was the first one. And then there's others. It's called like, all right, one second. It's called White Cliff Bay series. This is volume 1, and I think there's 2 more, another Christmas one and then a summary one. And Again, yeah, the story wasn't perfect or anything, but it was just so cozy. And I'm going to keep using that word because it's probably my coziest book that I read of the year. And I love a good cozy book. Probably the previous book I read that was more cozy than this is one of my favorite books I've listened to was the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I love that book. I love that book so much. Read it if you haven't. This is probably the book that's come closest to making me feel that cozy since I listened to that book. And so I need to start reading more cozy. Obviously, the last books I've listed are not very cozy. I don't think anyone describes The Outsider as a cozy read. So I do like a variety of books, but cozy books, just something about them. Oh, I love it a lot. And so this was one that hit that itch, especially if you're wanting to listen, like put it on your list to listen to when this Christmas season comes back around. And I just highly recommend it. It's such a fun little Christmas listen or read. And yeah, it's a cute little time. And I still miss it a little bit. So the next book I finished was also an audiobook. We did a lot of driving near the end of the trip. So this was one I listened to a lot to kind of finish up and finish listening to on the plane ride home. This one intrigued me because I'd read werewolves in books, but I'd never read like a true werewolf book. And apparently I was in a monster mood. I didn't realize how many monster books, that half of these books were monster books. Well, technically 4 of them if you include The Outsider, but I mean like vampires, 2 vampire books and now a werewolf book. It's called Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison, narrated by Kristen Sia. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing that last name, Sieh. I really did enjoy her voice. She did a good job in it. And what intrigued me was this is like a horror book. And as I said, a lot of the sort of vampire books I read, and then also I haven't really read many werewolf books. I read Bride earlier this year, but I haven't read many true werewolf books. And I definitely had never read one that was supposed to be a horror. Now, I wouldn't classify this one as very horror. The transformations, they're a little horrific. They go into some, like, I made like a face at one point during the detail of it all. She did a really good job describing it, and so that's probably where that horror element more comes into it, but it definitely is more of a drama still, in my opinion, and a romance. They're more than it is a horror, is my opinion for this book. Now, it was still good, and again, the like transformations of it did a good job with the horror of it, but just kind of during that, the rest of the book didn't really have much of a horror or suspenseful or anything like that sort of vibe. So I would more classify this as a drama romance, but still worth the read in my opinion. It was sweet, well done. The character is going through a lot, and I think they make some really interesting comparisons between becoming a vampire and some more hot topics like, some sexual assaults, other things like that, especially trauma from your childhood related to that sort of thing. So a little bit of a trigger warning on this book as well for anyone going into it, but I think it does an interesting job comparing the two. A little too on the nose at times with that comparison, but that's just like a me complaint. That's not other people. Not everyone would have an issue with how on the nose it was with that. I think that it dances the line just well enough where it barely teeters over. And so it's not like too frustrating. I think it does a good job with it and makes it so you understand exactly what's trying to be said. And they also do show. So they tell you it a bit too much, but they also show it. And so it has a little bit of that balance where I'm not too upset about that. It's not only telling, as some will do. And so that I think was good. I think it could be done a little bit better. Maybe I'd like to be interested to read some of her other stuff, maybe stuff she continues to write, like for future, and to see how that progresses in her writing and hearing that more tell, not show, because I think show, not tell, because I think she did a really good job showing when she did. She just added in some tells that didn't need to be there, if that makes sense. Kind of like sped up a lot for these next few books, I'm realizing, but so that one I finished on the plane, and then right before the plane I started also my final Kindle book that I finished last year, which is, again, I wanted something Christmassy vibes as we came back, because I landed back in the US on December 22nd. So right before Christmas. So I'm like, let's get into the vibes. And so it was Holiday Ever After by Hannah Grace. And I'd not read any of Hannah Grace's other ones. I'd seen some of her books in the store, like Icebreaker. Obviously, I feel like anytime you walk into the like romance section, you see that book there. So I'd seen that, but I hadn't read any of her books before. And it was cute. It was, like a cozy, Hallmarky Christmas movie into a book. And it even talks about Hallmark movies for a second, where she, like, the city girl first gets to the small town, and she's like, wow, this is like those small towns in the Hallmark movies. And I'm like, I literally, like, 2 pages before it said that in the book, said to Sri, oh, this is a Hallmark movie in a book, which was fine. That's what I wanted out of it. So that's not a hit or a negative. I love me a good cozy book and a good cozy movie every once in a while. So that's not a hit. Just a comment. And so, and then it self-awarely called itself out as that just moments later. So that was pretty interesting. And that one I finished actually the night we got back because I couldn't sleep because of jet lag. And so I was able to actually finish that. I woke up at like 3 a.m. that first night back and just stayed in bed and finished reading that book. And so I read it right after we got back, and that's the last book I finished this past year. It's now 2026. The last book I finished in 2025. Additional book I started when I was in India was actually a English translation of the Bhagavad Gita. I'll probably talk a little bit more about that one once I finish it, but don't worry, I don't plan on giving any sermons or anything like that. That's not my vibe, not my style. But I was intrigued to read it because I find reading those kinds of texts very interesting, and I never really read one all the way through. And so this was a new translation that came out, and it's a little bit shorter, a little bit quicker of a read. And so I thought, you know what, let's take a look. Let's do it. Because while I may not be religious, I am spiritual in other ways. So it's something that I was intrigued to read and learn a little bit more about. So now, before there's that pumpkin spice and everything nice review that I'll edit together right at the end of this video, I did want to kind of just talk about 2025 Wrapped, the books I read. So I did read a total of 16 books. The first book I finished was Atomic Habits by James Clear. Then I did read The Eye of the World, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. That was the longest book I read this year because it is 753 pages. The shortest book I read this year was Hot for Slayer by Ali Hazelwood, which was only 94. Those 2 books were the ones I read prior to starting my book videos July this year. And so that was where I was at in July. I then did read 2 books really quickly, which was also my first video. I read Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren and Desperate Measures by Katie Roberts. I really enjoyed both of those for different reasons, but they definitely were great books to get me back into reading because romance is something I enjoy a lot, and so getting me sunk back into reading and in that sort of addictive way of reading, those are 2 great books to start me off. Atomic Habits was a very interesting read. I'd be intrigued to reread that one, maybe in a physical edition, because I had listened to it as an audiobook and kind of really digest it a bit more, because I think it had some good ideas. I don't agree with everything said in it, which you shouldn't, because everyone's their own person, but I think there were some really good ideas in there that I would like to maybe try out and explore more. Eye of the World was obviously spectacular, by the way, where it's my dad's favorite book series, The Wheel of Time, and so it's something he's been wanting me to read for a long time, and I finally did. I am hoping to read The Great Hunt at some point this year in 2026, but yeah, so that's one of my goals, and it's also another long book, so we'll see, but I did really enjoy The Eye of the World. So after Desperate Measures, which you can see all these books I'm about to say I have at least somewhat review for already released. All the links to those will be in the description below. But yeah, I enjoyed those 2 books. Next, I read Bride, which I had a little bit more mixed opinions on. The Dream Guy Next Door I listened to. That's one I made a quick short about. Very quick, fun little listen. Furies of Calderon by Jim Butcher. Amazing. I love that book. That's another one I need to read the rest of the series. It's only 6 books, so a little bit quicker than Wheel of Time series, which I believe is 13. And so that's one I want to get the rest of those books and read all of them. Eye of the World, I own the first 3, so I already can read the next one pretty easily. But Furies of Calderon is definitely, I want to know what happens next. That was an amazing book, and I really enjoyed it. Same with it's very comparable to Eye of the World, honestly, but Fairies of Calderon jumped into it a lot faster than Eye of the World. Eye of the World was a little bit more traditional fantasy where you got that slower burn at the start. And so for me, trying to read quickly, that wasn't the best thing for that time, but Fairies of Calderon was a lot quicker. And so that's sort of the difference. It's just a difference in style. I don't think one is better than the other. I think it just depends on what you like and what you're in the mood for. Also, while reading Fairies of Calderon, I listened to Finders Keeper by Stephen King and Someone Else's Shoes by Jojo Moyes. I really enjoyed those. Those three are all in a video where I briefly talk about them. Then I finished Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice right before I left. And then, of course, the 6 books that I just talked about. Interview with the Vampire, Outsider, Hot for Slayer, Christmas at Lilac College, Such Sharp Teeth, and Holiday Ever After. So according to Goodreads, which if anyone has a recommendation for something other than Goodreads I can use next year for tracking books that sort of does the similar thing of like I can track them, mark my progress, and like also see a year-end cap of what I've read, I really want one. I want to not use Goodreads. So if anyone has any suggestions, let me know. I just haven't been able to find one that is comparable yet, so please leave me suggestions. I'll also be looking into that for 2026. My year in books. So apparently I read 6,343 pages, which is always a little not fully accurate with audiobooks mixed in there, but it should be a good rough estimate. And that was between 16 books. The average book length I read was about 396. The book I read that was the most shelved was Atomic Habits, which makes sense. And then least shelved was actually Christmas at Lilac Cottage. So everyone who's watching this, add it to your shelf, because on whatever you read or use to track, or your physical shelf at home, because it was a really cute, cozy read that I would definitely recommend for Christmas this year. And then the highest rated book I read was also Atomic Habits, which has an average of 4.13 stars. But yeah, those were the books I read in 2025. Right after this is about to be my review for Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice. I hope you enjoyed kind of my quick thoughts here. And also, if you didn't know, I'm starting a book club this year, 2026, the CHUM Book Club, which you can go and join us for over at the CHUMBAGQ TV channel. I'll be posting monthly videos where I talk about a specific book that I'll announce at the start of each month or in the previous ones for going forward. So like when I talk about the January book, I'll announce the February one, and I'll also make a post about it. To start off the year, we are going to be reading Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I have already started it a little. As you can see, I'm on chapter 4, and it's spectacular. I really, really like this book so far, and I'm looking forward to finishing reading this. It's definitely I saw a thing about this where someone was like, it's the closest they felt to being addicted to drugs was reading this book, and while I do still feel that's a big exaggeration, I get it. Previously, I'd listened to Andy Weir's short stories, like The Egg and Other Stories, and those were awesome. I really enjoyed his writing and style for that, and it stayed true for this one. Different books, but his way of talking about sci-fi, I find really fascinating. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading through this whole book and then watching the movie starring Ryan Gosling when it comes out, I think in March this year. Yeah, I hope you join me for my book club. I'm very excited about starting it, so please do and read along, and hopefully you like the books that I've picked. I've mostly curated the year, so I might be posting some of the books early just in case anyone's a slower reader, so they can get through, maybe pick and choose the ones they most want to read, or just like give people that flexibility. But for now, I've only released the January one as I kind of firm up the list and decide how I want to go forward with it. But yeah, I'm excited about it, looking forward to it, and expect a lot more book content here on this channel, as well as those monthly book club books over on the CHUMBAGQ TV channel. So thank you all so much for watching. Please enjoy my Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice review right after this.
What's up, CHUMBAGQ? It's your girl Alexa, and I have finished reading another book very quickly. I did it, guys. I finished Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice in time before I leave. I leave today in hours. So I am recording this really fast, and then I'm hoping to edit on my iPad, which will be fun because I've never edited on my iPad before. But Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice, I am going to keep this as a bit of a quicker review also because of that, because I don't have a lot of time to record. My bangs are a mess, but we're going to move past that. Okay, Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice by Katie Kikatelli Cook. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if not, Katie. But it was okay. I'm going to be bluntly honest about it. It was cute. The main character, it follows the story of Lucy Kane, who lives in a quaint New England town of Briar Glen, which is known for all things autumn. But she runs a coffee shop with her mother, Joanna, called Cup of Joe. Pretty cute. J-O, like Joanna, not Joe, like Joe, like normal. Very cute. But here's the twist. Even though she lives in Autumn Central and pretty much co-runs the coffee shop with her mother, she hates pumpkin spice lattes. Bum, bum, bum. Anyways, so it then continues on. There's a Java Junction that opens up across the street, and the cute new kid is somehow related to it, which is disappointing for her. Jack Harper. He is so perfect. He might be a robot in Lucy's head, but so the book, it's cute, it's quick. Obviously, I read it very fast, and there were a couple times I did want to stop reading it. I actually debated just stopping, but I wanted to finish it so I could do this video for y'all and just kind of talk about it. It wasn't for me, I have to say, is the key thing. The character of Lucy Kane is the type of teenager I never was and never liked, and that made it tough for me to continue reading sometimes, because as I said, my Furies of Calderon review, one of my favorite things about it was how much I enjoyed each of the characters, even if I didn't like how they were. But Lucy Kane and the writing doesn't save it enough for me to still like her. I mean, the whole time she just jumps to conclusions continually and just like makes really dumb decisions in how she behaves. And I get it, teenagers, hormone, but I was never really liked as a teen, so like I can't relate to it. Maybe if someone was closer to this in their teenage years, this would be more enjoyable for them, or if they're a teenager currently feeling like that or know people like that, they might, enjoy this a bit more. It just was not for me, is really the short and sweet of this. It was very cute, but there's a lot of like writing just was unnatural, and just like the amount of time she calls Jack a lying liar when like you're rooting with everyone else in this book besides our main character, who's this perspective is from. Like everyone is like, girl, you gotta chill, and she's like, how dare you never say that to me again, how dare. And then the friends, they're just like, okay girl, you do you. And everyone else is so sane and normal, and she's just like kind of the worst. It's very simple, it's very cute. Also, this is in New England, right? Where in New England? I need to know, because no one says wicked once, no one says you guys, no bubblers are mentioned. I'm confused. I grew up in New England, so of course you're going to set a fall book there because it's the most beautiful place in the world. I see the author is from New York, which is not New England, but it's okay. New York is also great and has some beautiful fall places for sure. It says she lives in a cute town similar to this near the Hudson Valley, which makes sense because there's a lot of gorgeous fall places there. But no one said wicked once. And so I'm guessing it's not Massachusetts is what I kind of gather from that, which is my favorite of the New England states, because I have opinions on that. But and in case anyone was watching this from other places within the U.S. or outside of the U.S., New England is still a real place. It's all the states in like the top northeast of the U.S. So it's Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island are what's considered New England. I remember when I moved out of New England to another state, most people did not know what New England was or that it was still a thing, despite the fact that it was New England Patriots. And I like would say that to them and they'd be like, oh yeah, I just never thought about it. And I'm like, I also moved from like one of the top states of education to like one of the lower ones. So bottom half. So that was rough. But back to the book. One thing that was interesting. So Jack is a book nerd. Shout out, love me some book nerds. But Lucy then doesn't like books, like actively hates books. And that's also a thing that makes it hard to root for her as a reader. And she doesn't hate books, but like the few times books are mentioned, she's like, oh, that book was so boring. Tis what it is, wasn't her jam. But then there's like, so Jack will say words and she doesn't know them. She's like, you and your vocabulary. But they're all like really normal words. Like the biggest one for me is, so you're telling me this girl lives in, I almost said a worse word. This girl lives in a small town in New England that is known for autumn. Like tourists come here just to see the pretty leaves. Wait, look at the pretty leaves. I'm in my cool edition. And she doesn't know the word autumnal. She doesn't know the word autumnal? She doesn't know the word autumnal. What? How? That's my question on that. How? So she's kind of dumb too. Like in like throughout the thing, like everyone, pretty much the book is like her being like, no, never. And then being like, actually, that's a good idea. But doing it in a way where she like kind of makes it her own idea. Like she starts to kind of give credit near the end, but she's very much like when she's like, her friends have been telling her the same thing over and over again, and then she's like, and I've done it, and now like her one friend tells her to like start up the social media. She doesn't listen. Jack tells her to start up social media. She gets pissed at him, and then she's like, you know what, I should start up the social media, let's do it. And she does have a thing of like, maybe they were right, like, but it just feels very like odd to me. I don't know. I just don't get people. And the way she treats him, like Jack has no business liking her. I'm just saying, she has given him nothing. And that for me, I mean, that's something that happens sometimes in books. I've read a few others like that where like you don't understand, like the main character has done nothing to make the love interest like them, and the love interest is this great person, and then the main character is just like kind of shitty. And sometimes you can like let that slide depending on what type of book it is, but for this one it just didn't work. I think he had better options at the school, and I get like the idea of like, oh, she's so strong-willed and such. I get the appeal of the strong-willed girl, but or boy. But she was so rude to him so much, like so often in weird ways that I couldn't believe their romance for a moment. This is a zero spice book, besides pumpkin spice. There's no spiciness to it, as in the wink wink type of spicy. I'm not good at winking. And I really like, honestly, I didn't like the book, but I still love this cover. I know it's like kind of the cute, this trend of like the comic style is really popular, but see the gold details. This is in gold. The side here gold, the back even we got gold detailing, and then we have the beautiful sides of this. It's so orange and fall and pretty that I'm happy to have it on my shelf. I wish I liked the book more. I really do. But yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap up this video, keep it pretty short. I think my shortest of the reviews yet, if you don't count my short that I made. Short. So that has been all for my thoughts on pumpkin spice and everything nice. Not for me. I think I just wasn't the target audience for this. End of the day, I could see why people would enjoy it. I can see the appeal that it could have, but for me, I couldn't get past some of the really cheesy dialogue, and how much in the dialogue was made worse because I don't like the main character and like as a character or as a person, and that made it hard for me to continue on reading through because I just kept being annoyed with her and like stop being a dumb teenager. But that's the book. She's a dumb teenager. Okay, I'm now age, and so I have a harder time relating to teenagers, but even if I was a teenager, I wouldn't have related to her, for me, because that's just not the type of person I am. But again, I've known people like this, and I can see why it would appeal to others. If this sounds like something you might like, don't take my negative opinion as a reason not to read it. But yeah, those are, if you maybe lean more towards my thoughts, then maybe find something else to do with your time. But it was a cute little fall cozy read, and I'm not upset that I read it too much.
Wow, what a great review. I totally remember what I said in it. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a good night, good morning, damn good time. Bye.